I have codified how to create a really fantastic relationship by naming the 6 essential qualities that you need. It's not specifically 6 things that you do. It is things that you do, but it's also about cultivating 6 ways of being with one another. So the 6 qualities of a really fantastic, intimate, passionate, connected marriage are: it's been a while since I read a rating or review to open the show, and I want to do so again right now. This is from September 30th, 2024 on iTunes. Thank you for creating a new paradigm for cultivating intimacy in marriage. We deserve better and are grateful for your wisdom and insight. Thank you so much for that rating and review. We all deserve better. And if you haven't left a rating or review, please go ahead and do so now. I would be so grateful. Most people, when they get married, feel pretty confident about what it is to be married, how to navigate things. Plus, you're in love with the person you're marrying. It just seems like a time full of promise. And then, some amount of time in, most individuals go through a phase where everything just seems so confusing, kind of random. It's hard to know how to succeed. And especially for those of you who are used to being successful, used to being high performers who identify a problem and either you just take action and resolve the problem, or you know exactly where to find answers. It might happen right away. It might take a little time, but you get clear on what your goals are and you know how to move forward. This is the way that you navigate matters in your professional life, even in parenting. A lot of the time, if there's an issue, you find a book, you find a more experienced parent and figure it out. But when it comes to marriage, things can just feel so confusing, like it's just not clear. You know that you want to show up in a way that is much more successful. You know your spouse loves you and wants you to be more successful, or wants to be more successful in how they interact with you, but somehow that is not what is happening. And I actually used to feel this way. My mother was divorced twice, actually. My father was divorced. My husband's parents were divorced. And I wondered, how is it even possible? Is it even possible if you don't just luck out and end up with a really great marriage? How is it possible to create, to grow in such a way that your marriage is genuinely fulfilling, satisfying? It functions as rocket fuel for the rest of your life. And I'm talking about communication, flirtation, how you interact with one another and logistical matters, how you navigate all of the responsibilities you both carry, as well as playfulness and intimacy in the bedroom, erotic passion and tender touching, all of that. So one of the first questions I had was, is this actually a learnable skill? Or is it just luck or destiny or who knows what? Well, once my husband and I figured this out after about 10 years of a marriage that was happy enough, collaborative, companionship. We had similar goals in professional matters, parenting, finances, and so forth, but it was not a passionate marriage. And while things looked great on the outside, inside, I felt lonely in this way that I would have been too embarrassed to articulate, but it's exactly what I experienced every day. And I have since understood that my husband had his version of that as well, even though we both loved one another so much. Anyway, fast forward, and we did crack the code. We found our way to one another such that our marriage for years now really has been extraordinary, which, by the way, does not mean that we do not have any sticky, crunchy, uncomfortable moments. It does not mean that I never feel lonely. It does not mean that everything is always ecstatic and we're both ready to just seamlessly fall into one another's arms. That is not what I mean by an extraordinary marriage, but I know how to transition into that with intention and attention to both my own experience and my husband's. Having a fantastic relationship is definitely a learnable skill. Not only did my husband and I learn it, but I have taught many, many couples have learned how to have really fantastic relationships. I have codified how to create a really fantastic relationship by naming the 6 essential qualities that you need. In fact, this is what my book is all about. It's called Uncompromising Intimacy. And in it, I tell stories from my own relationship and other couples as well. And I give very easily followed instruction in how to cultivate these 6 qualities. So the 6 qualities of a really fantastic, intimate, passionate, connected marriage are: cultivate curiosity, embrace honesty, be kind, choose happiness, take responsibility, and seek growth. And I'm going to say a little bit about each one, but I definitely encourage you to get my book. The link is in the show notes. Again, the name of it is Uncompromising Intimacy, and it's available both as a paperback on Amazon and Audible, read by me. Now, one of the things about these 6 qualities is that they all sound so obvious, so straightforward, so simple. Like, who's going to argue with being kind to your spouse? Who's going to argue with whether or not to embrace honesty? But in fact, each of these qualities, with familiar words which seem so simple, point to a whole way of being, which quite honestly is not easy to achieve all of the time, especially when you're triggered, when you're feeling taken for granted, when you're angry. These are not the qualities that come to mind in those moments, nor are they the qualities that really naturally grow in a marriage which is otherwise dehydrated. So I want to talk about each of the qualities as part of an invitation to you to listen and hear which one you want to lean into first. Because even though I generally talk about them in a particular order, they could be developed in any order you like. So the first one is cultivate curiosity. It's actually incredible, kind of sad, how many couples go through life together after 10 years of marriage, 15, 20, 25, without asking one another real questions, open-ended questions, meaning the kinds of questions for which there isn't a right or wrong answer. It's not that, your partner's either going to get it right or you're going to be upset or critical. No. And these are not the kinds of questions like, can you pick up the kids from school today? Nothing logistical. These are the kinds of questions that are like, what are you feeling right now? Or when you're driving to work, what kinds of things do you daydream about? What's on your mind? And actually, these questions can be whimsical. Like, if you could have dinner with any celebrity, alive or dead, who would it be and what would you ask them? If you could be president of any country, which one would you choose and what kind of policies would you want to enforce? I mean, this can be fun, this can be playful, this can build on whatever shared interests you have or interests that your spouse has. These can be deep, these can be about sexual fantasies. The important thing is that you genuinely are interested, and whatever you ask, there's not going to be a wrong answer, because it's really just about getting to know your partner better. This is a relatively easy pivot to make if you're interested, if you care about your partner. Ask them questions, because we all yearn to feel seen and heard. Now, there's actually a lot more to what I'm going to call technology of cultivating curiosity, which I detail in my book, but you can hear what I'm saying right now and start asking questions. And let me just say, this is not an interrogation. These are questions to ask in a tone and manner and volume that conveys your interest. And then it is your job to listen generously. Have it feel good to open up and tell you, and then connect from there. The second quality is to embrace honesty. There are many layers of embracing honesty, of revealing what is true for you. And I think this is something that one never stops expanding in the capacity to embrace honesty, because one of the things about embracing honesty is that you have to be self-aware. You have to know what actually is your truth. What is real inside you about your experience? So step one of embracing honesty is to know what you would be honest about. And step two is to find the way to share what is real for you, what is true for you about yourself, your relationship, about your spouse, about things you're experiencing in other areas of your life, any area that's important. You want to be able to share about it with your spouse in a way that works for both of you, which, by the way, means not blaming, not criticizing, not taking a bucket of internal truth and dumping it on his or her head. No, this is learning how to be honest without sacrificing one iota of relationality. This is definitely something to do the equivalent of lifting 5-pound weights and then 10-pound weights and then working your way up to 180 pounds. But the point is, start small. Maybe your wife likes going to furniture stores and you don't, but you've never told her. And so she likes to go once, sometimes twice a month, and you two like to spend time together, so you go with her too. Well, maybe it's time to say, actually, honey, I love being with you, but I don't really enjoy going to furniture stores. That would be a big deal. And you would need to face the possibility of consequences you're trying to avoid. But if both of you are really committed to growing and learning together, she's going to be so happy to hear what your real experience is. Because if we're not sharing the truth of who we are, the marriage is inherently more dull, more disconnected than if you do share the truth of who you are. This is one of the foundational principles of uncompromising intimacy, and embrace honesty is one of the places that really shows up. However, I want to give the caveat that I am not a fan of brutal honesty. That is sacrificing relationality in order to speak your truth. No, there is vulnerable honesty, which when you learn how to do that, really creates the most incredible connection. And once again, you can get more details in how to do that in my book, Uncompromising Intimacy. The third quality essential for a really dynamic, fulfilling, passionate marriage is be kind. Being kind can look a lot of different ways. And in the book, I like to distinguish the difference between being nice and being kind, because basically we know that being nasty, being a narcissistic jerk is no good for connected marriage. But many people, many people go in the opposite direction of being nice, people-pleasing, accommodating. And that, while a lot better for keeping peace in your home and better for society in general, is not actually that much better for stoking passion and reigniting the spark. That happens when you are kind, and kind includes an honesty, a self-honoring. It's very closely related to embracing honesty, but being kind has everything to do with how you share what is true for you. But it definitely requires you to share what is true for you. So being kind means being honest that you don't want to go to furniture stores with a loving tone, with compassion, with connection, having that interaction not feel like, oh my gosh, how could I have taken you there? I feel awful. Why didn't you tell me sooner? To instead be just really grateful. Oh, thank you for telling me. Let's do this differently going forward. I could use an example of not wanting to go to a restaurant, of wanting more foreplay before making love, of living in a different town. Like, everything that I'm saying applies to small, basically benign matters, medium matters, and the biggest matters you might imagine. The fourth quality of uncompromising intimacy, a magnificent, connected, satisfying marriage, is choose happiness. Now, I did say earlier that you can work on any of these qualities in any order, and that is true. However, I never talk about choose happiness until I've spoken about cultivating curiosity, embracing honesty, and being kind, because choose happiness is not an avoidance tactic. It is not sweeping things under the rug and just being happy and pretending there's nothing wrong. No, you need to be able to address the things that come out as you embrace honesty and be kind, and to really be curious about yourself and your partner and ask questions. And when you have the capacity to be real with one another, to be genuine and connected in these ways, then choose happiness becomes an incredibly important quality. It's the capacity to be present, be regulated enough, and choose, is something bothering you important enough to put attention on? If it is, you embrace the earlier qualities I've talked about. And if it's not, you have the ability to just pivot and choose happiness instead of marinating in resentment, instead of wishing things would be different and kind of drowning in disappointment. No, you develop the capacity to genuinely embrace happiness, not just as a cover when underneath you're sad or angry. Embrace happiness is a whole pivot. And sometimes there are occasions when it makes sense to embrace happiness because of what's going on or who's there or what you're in the middle of. And then the next week, the next day, later that evening, you can shift into embracing honesty. But certainly the capacity to choose happiness and enjoy what your circumstances are is a very important part of having a happy marriage. The fifth quality of a fantastic, intimate marriage is take responsibility. And one of the most important elements when it comes to taking responsibility is that I think in modern marriage, in an egalitarian context, we tend to think the best option is 50-50. If our household tasks, if parenting, if decision-making, if putting attention on and caring for the marriage is 50-50, then that is the path to everything being wonderful. But it isn't. It just isn't. If you take 50% responsibility for the success of your marriage and your spouse takes 50% responsibility for the success of your marriage, there's a great likelihood that the two of you are going to both take responsibility for some of the same things, which is not really problematic, except that there are going to be things that neither one of you take responsibility for. You're going to feel off the hook for the other 50%. So I warmly invite you to adopt the mindset, attitude, and actions of taking 100% responsibility for the quality of your marriage, of taking 100% responsibility that things feel the way you want them to feel, that things are connected in the way that you desire. Now, this does not mean that your partner is off the hook. It's not that you take 100% responsibility and they don't take any. This is relationship math, where the whole consists of you taking 100% responsibility for the experience, for the feelings, for the quality of the marriage, and your spouse takes 100% responsibility as well. If the two of you each make no change but this one, you will feel an incredible up level in the quality of your connection. Taking responsibility does not, for example, mean, I'll use a messy house, but it could be any example. It could be things related to communication in the marriage or sex or any important issue, really. If you're going to take 100% responsibility for the quality of the marriage as it pertains to a messy living room, you could think that taking responsibility means that you clean it up. You're taking 100% responsibility, so you make sure to clean it up. And that is one way to take responsibility, for sure. Another way to take responsibility is to get into some good routines with your kids so that the living room is not as messy. And those are routines that you can connect with your spouse about implementing together. Another way is to use vulnerability and kindness and curiosity and convey to your spouse how much it bugs you, how you walk in your house and your energy just drops when you see how messy the living room is. And then together you find creative solutions so that the living room stays more orderly most of the time. That is a way of taking responsibility as well, sharing what is real for you and then collaborating on what you're going to do about it. There's a lot more to taking responsibility. So again, check out my book, Uncompromising Intimacy, if these qualities are speaking to you, because if you listen on Audible, it's just me talking like I am here, but all about the 6 qualities to cultivate an intimate marriage. The 6th quality is seek growth. Who you were the day you got married is not who you are today. And if it is, you're stagnating, and that will dehydrate and undercut all the juicy, dynamic, loving, connected energy in a marriage. You do continue to grow, but it doesn't mean the two of you continue to grow in your marriage unless there's some kind of crisis or you both choose to. You are intentional and attentional, and there are so many wonderful ways to seek growth. It could be continuing to learn something. You take a cooking class together, you go running together. These are ways of learning together that nourish a marriage. Learning to communicate more effectively, learning how to choose happiness. There's so many different kind of contexts and considerations in ways to seek growth, which I go into in much more detail in the book. But the point is that in the end, I think one of the most essential qualities for a truly fantastic, purpose-filled, gratifying marriage is that you seek growth in yourself and with your partner. And I know, as someone listening to this podcast, that of course you seek growth. Otherwise, you wouldn't have chosen to listen to what I'm sharing here. And you probably can dial it up. Or at least you can dial it up with how you seek growth with one another. So to summarize all this terrain that I've just covered, I warmly invite you, as I list the 6 qualities again that I cover in so much more detail in Uncompromising Intimacy, that you listen and pick one that you're going to be intentional about. I'm basically giving you a guide to seek growth. What is an area that you want to, it's like in the garden of your relationship, which plants do you want to cultivate and tend and make sure they're well fertilized and just sit and enjoy what they look like and what the smell is? Which of these qualities do you want to be the gardener for? Cultivate curiosity, embrace honesty, be kind, choose happiness, take responsibility, and seek growth. I often talk about the importance of uncompromising intimacy, of learning how to share the whole truth of who you are so that your partner can receive you and meet you there and share similarly. Well, these 6 qualities are the roadmap to get you there.